Hello again, I am Blunty, and I already have an extensive and detailed look at the ROG Ally, what it is, what it does, and rather most importantly, a whole big pile of actual gameplay, not boring bar graphs, to show you how well it does what it's supposed to do. And the short version of that, if you haven't watched that video yet, it's pretty damn great. I really like this thing. But here's a question. Is there enough power here to make a practical VR experience happen? And what are the limits to the kinds of experiences that can actually feel good in VR running from this thing? Because running VR titles is one thing, but running them at a good frame rate with steady frame pacing so you don't yak up your lunch is a whole other ball of fish. Wait a minute, that wasn't deliberate. My brain just freaked out there for a second. Bowl of fruit, barrel of fish, somewhere in the middle there. It's a whole other thing. Jesus wept. And the short answer to this question is yes, because as you may have assumed, you are watching it do VR right now. It's the footage I've been using to introduce this video is, of course, VR running on the ROG Ally. And never underestimate how hard it is to present to camera while wearing a VR headset when you've got no point of reference. I hope I'm pointed my face vaguely in the direction of the lens so this reads properly. Also, I hope I've tilted this so the lights don't bounce off the screen so you can actually see the VR in action. Hello! See that? See that? See that? See that? Hello! VR! Is this what the future looks like? Well, yes and no. Let's get into it. But here's the thing, this is VRChat I'm showing you here, one of, if not the most popular VR applications in the world. And the thing is with VRChat is it has a bunch of different worlds, user-generated worlds, user-made worlds, and user-made avatars. And some of these are absolute performance pigs. And this one right here is a fairly lightweight example, as you might imagine. In fact, this world is specifically designed to be easy enough to run on the likes of the Meta Quest 2 standalone application for VRChat. So it's hardly a crunchy test. So let's start kicking things up, try out some more difficult worlds, and also try some other popular VR app choices to see if the ROG Ally handheld PC can be pulled into service as a proper VR rig as well. Now, quick hardware once over before we step in so you have the right context. I'll be using the Meta Quest 2 headset for this. It is by far the most common choice for Steam VR by a very wide margin, and it makes a great representative example, and it's the VR headset I use. I'll be using the official wireless tethering method called Air Link. It works over Wi-Fi and is in fact how I use this headset most often normally, except, connected to my full-fat gaming rig. And I'll be testing with the ROG Ally set to its full power turbo mode, because if you are doing VR, obviously handheld mode isn't being used, so having the device plugged in or docked is the smarter, most obvious way to go. But I will also be testing it in the standard performance mode, because hey, let's find out if you can do VR completely free of cables, even power ones. I mean, you can totally do that already with a halfway decent gaming laptop, but this thing can slide into a large pocket, so that's fun. I mean, you saw me do it in the intro, but that was just an intro gimmick. Does it actually work properly? We'll find out. Now then, diving in. So, there's two types of world in VRChat. One's made specifically to accommodate the Quest-compatible worlds. They are VRChat Easy Mode. So are the low-poly Quest-compatible avatars. And while on PC with these worlds and avatars, you're still hitting better fidelity because you're running at higher resolution, you're getting better frame rates, etc., etc. And they do indeed run well, in general. Now, something I didn't notice when I was recording this, because I was inside VR at the time and literally couldn't see it, but that MSI Afterburner overlay up there that I'm using to watch frame rate and frame time and GPU and CPU loads, that's not actually reading the accurate frame rate. That is instead reading the frame rate of the Steam VR desktop preview window, which, as it turns out, is not representative of what's inside VR. So it's reading 35 FPS there, for example. Inside VR, it felt closer to 60, which makes sense. No point in burning too many resources on the preview window. So keep that in mind. The shown frame rate in the desktop preview image is half of what I was actually seeing in VR. If you see 30, it means I'm seeing 60. If you see 35, I'm seeing 70. But as you can see, the story is it actually works really quite nicely. I can't max out all the graphic options as you'd imagine, but the experience is still well above the standalone Oculus version, so I'm calling it practical as an extremely portable VR solution. Low bar cleared, let's hit up some PC-only worlds and then go into some public instances so we can have a bunch of other people around and their PC avatars and really kick this thing's tires. Starting simple, the track nerd in me was delighted by the Enterprise Bridge experience. Smooth, easy, clean, no worries. But that is about as easy as PC worlds get. Now, let's jump into a proper one. A social space, a multi-room environment, complicated lighting, huge windows, rain effects, and rather more impactful, now we're loading up at least a dozen other people and their avatars and the voice chat and the music. And well, it's acceptable. Inside VR, the experience isn't completely smooth, a little hitch here and there, but again, that's kind of common on my big desktop rig as well. It's especially noticeable when moving about, but again, that's actually not uncommon even on very powerful gaming rigs. VRChat is just kind of a pig. But I was getting between 40 and 50 FPS, which, not ideal for VR, is at least the bare minimum I'd accept for this kind of experience specifically, to avoid getting motion sick, because you're not running and jumping around, you're not shooting things, you're just kind of hanging out. So 40 to 50 FPS is okay. Your mileage may vary. Some people have a higher or lower tolerance for the kooky effects of VR at lower frame rates, and you can build a better tolerance over time, as I did. But as far as I'm concerned, for this kind of fairly passive social experience, this performance is useful. We'll call it useful. But now I want to go into a world I discovered recently and had such a friggin' blast while streaming it to Twitch. I uploaded some of it to YouTube to share it around and let people know about this awesome little world. It's a world with literal flight sims built into it and a bunch of planes and helicopters to fly around. Here is where a steady and high frame rate matters a lot more than just a room to chat in. In motion, at this kind of speed, at this altitude, with this kind of VR vertigo going on, yeah, you want good performance. Maddeningly, for some reason, this is the only damn clip I recorded where MSI Afterburner didn't work properly. It didn't crash, it was still running in the background, I checked. It just didn't pop up on the overlay. Whatever. So you just have to take my word for this one. Plus you can see for yourself it's running nice and steadily, even though this YouTube video is at 30 FPS. But yeah, if I had to take a guesstimate, I'm seeing 60 to 70 FPS here. It certainly felt quite smooth and frame pacing was consistent, so flying around like this didn't make me queasy or wibbly at all. And finally, before moving on, at least for a little bit, let's see what stepping down from the 30-watt turbo mode does. For a quick little benchmark, I chose a middle-of-the-road performance world where I get about 50-ish FPS in that turbo mode. Well, the humble battery-sipping silent mode at just 9 watts, obviously no. no. And no one with a clue would have expected anything more. But at the very least it didn't, crash. But yeah, jumping away from this one before I chunder all over my feet. How about the default performance mode? That's 15 watts, half of what I'd been running so far in turbo, and I get a barely acceptable 30 FPS or so, which if you're just sitting still and chatting, maybe you could tolerate, but frankly, no thank you. You do really want to stick with turbo mode for this stuff, but as I said in the opening, if you're in VR, you're in a controlled environment, you're sitting or standing in one place, you're not very likely trying to do this on a moving bus, so having the ROG Ally plugged in so it can run at full power is a pretty obvious and simple choice to make for this anyway. Now, we'll leave it there on VRChat for the moment, but we are going to come back to VRChat at the end of the video because there is one more experience I want to test it out with, but we need to come back around to that. For now, though, let's look at Beat Saber, another extremely popular VR app. And fun fact, I had one of the world's first interviews with the developer way back in 2018. The game had literally just launched like 2 days ago. Nobody knew about it. I don't want to be all like, I knew it was great before you guys did, but, I did. Anyway, unlike VRChat, which depending on what you're doing and how you're doing it, Beat Saber is simply unplayable unless it is fast, smooth, and above all else, consistent and reliable when it comes to performance because, of course, it is a rhythm game, so timing is everything. And great news here, it runs liquid smooth and very, very consistently, way better than the standalone version of the game that is also available on the Quest Marketplace. Clean, crisp, smooth, and still super duper duper fun. It's been a while since I've actually played Beat Saber. I almost forgot how awesome it is. Almost. Serious Sam VR, one of my go-tos for VR testing for so many years now, because not only is it big dumb fun, but this style of game in particular lends itself extremely well to testing VR. High-paced action shooting, relying on excellent situational awareness, and most importantly, being able to judge depth properly. And because of the way it makes you whip your head around to keep your eyes on enemies coming at you from all sides, it makes a great test for VR, because any lag here on those fast head turns will stand out like a sore thumb and will make you dizzy. And once more, great news. I'm hitting somewhere around 70 FPS, which is a good target for this stuff. 90 FPS is ideal for this, but 70 is the floor opinion. It's the minimum. And this too felt pretty good, easily under the umbrella of playable. In fact, I played it for about 3 times longer than I intended to, or needed to get the footage and testing that I needed for this video. How about Rec Room? Not as popular as VRChat when it comes to social VR apps, but it does have the advantage of a much more reliable experience, having, as it does, a consistent presentation style and standardized user customizable avatars. And it too hits the 70 to 90 FPS mark pretty easily. No worries there. Right, now finally, that other VRChat experience I mentioned I wanted to test. Well, actually it's not VR mode at all, it's the desktop mode. It's naturally more limited in interaction and overall immersive experience than VR mode, of course, but VRChat, despite its name, has in fact had a fully functional desktop mode since its earliest days. And while some people use this because they simply don't have VR and still want the social experience that it offers, it's not uncommon for VR users as well to pop into desktop mode here and there for a more relaxed and comfortable experience as well, and still be able to hang out with all their mates there. And if all you are doing is hanging out and chatting and not doing much physical interacting or playing the mini games and whatnot, it is very nice to have this option. And without the extra demands of VR, primarily being that the VR experience has to render each frame twice, once for each eye, because that's how stereoscopy works to make a 3D image, in desktop mode, it's more of a traditional render, and it runs great, 40 to 50 FPS in the difficult PC-only social rooms with 17 other people present, and the excellent thumbsticks on the Ally make the experience feel nice and smooth too. So, can the ROG Ally run VR? Yes. Yes, it can. Can it run VR well? Yes. Conditionally. Should it be your primary VR machine? No, that would be dumb. But as a secondary, as a highly portable alternative, as something you can super easily take with you on a vacation or over to a friend's house or just to a different room in your own home because someone else in the house is using the main PC, yeah, this can work for VR quite well. And if you're a VRChat addicted person, desktop mode on handheld, curled up somewhere comfy, hanging out with your weird VRChat mates, it's actually pretty fantastic for that. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you found this interesting or useful. Hopefully both. If you did, have you done the thumb and the comment and the whatnot yet? Yeah, you can go ahead and do that, please. Thank you as always to the patrons scrolling above there. I am Blunty. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.